This video will cover Chapter 3, Section 2, sorry for the typo, slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form means that your equation is going to be in the form y is equal to mx plus b. So when I say slope-intercept form, I always want y is equal to mx plus b. Now m is equal to your slope. And as you know, in the last section, we went over what the slope is. So that's how much your line is changing by. So it's the change in y divided by the change in x. Your y-intercept is whenever you have x is equal to 0. So when x is equal to 0, the y value that you get when x is equal to 0 is going to be your y-intercept, or your b. So, first we're going to talk about just finding the slope and the y-intercept from the actual equation, or the m and the b. If you remember, on our last slide, we said that our slope-intercept form is y is equal to mx plus b. Now, if we look at our equation, we see that we have y is equal to 5x minus 2. If we were to just go ahead and find m and b, it would be in the exact same place as your y equals mx plus b equation. So we know our m is equal to 5, and our b is equal to a negative 2, because there's normally a positive sign in front. So when you see a negative sign in front, then your slope or your intercept needs to be the negative. Whatever sign is in front is what it should be. Now remember, m is the same thing as your slope, and b is the same thing as your y-intercept. So that's all you have to do. Just find the ones in the correct place. So I want you to try this example on your own. Now remember, your slope can be a fraction. So pause this video, attempt this problem on your own, and when you completed it, press start again and we'll do it together. If you look, remember our original equation was y is equal to mx plus b. And our equation now says y is equal to 2/3 x plus 4. We see that our m is in the same spot and so is our b. So our m is going to be 2/3 and our b is going to be 4. Remember, m is the same thing as your slope, so we know this is also equal to your slope. And 4 is the same thing as your y-intercept. All right, let's talk about actually just making our equation. Let's say we have our slope and our y-intercept, and we want to make our equation. So remember, our equation for slope-intercept form is always y is equal to mx plus b. Up above, we see that our slope is going to be equal to 4/3, sorry. And our slope is the same thing as m. And we see that our b, our y-intercept, is equal to -5, and that is the same thing as our b. So now we just have to plug these numbers into our equation. So we're going to write y is equal to, and instead of writing m, we're going to write our slope, which is 4/3. And then instead of writing b, we're going to write our y-intercept, which was -5. And remember that positive and negative is just going to change to a negative. So we can go ahead and erase that positive sign in front. And sorry, this should be a 5 here, not a b. All right, go ahead and try this example on your own. I want you to pause the video, attempt the example, and then once you've finished, go ahead and press play and we'll go through it together. Remember that our equation always y equals mx plus b. And so we see that we have our slope here, which is going to be -1/5. And that is the same thing as your letter m. And our b is going to be the y-intercept, which is going to be 4. So now in our equation, we're going to keep everything the same, but instead of writing m, we're going to write -1/5. And then instead of writing b, we are going to write a +4. And that's it. All right, so now let's say that we have a line and we want to write an equation for that line. So remember, our equation is always y is equal to mx plus b. So we have to find two things. We have to find our m and we have to find our b. Remember, our m is just like how we found it in 3.1, where you just do rise over run. So we can count how many times we go up or down and then how many times we go left or right. If I were to start at this bottom point, I would have to go up first to get to the other dot, because remember, up and down is always on top. So I'll have to go up 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So for m, my top number is going to be 4. And since I went up, that is going to be a +4. And then I will have to go to the right, which will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And when you go to the right, your answer is always going to be positive. So our m, or our slope, is going to be 4/5. And then our b is where it just crosses the y-axis. Remember, your y-axis is always this line that goes up and down. So if we drew a line through our y-axis, we see that that line crosses the y-axis at -1, 2, 3, 4. So at -4, we see that it crosses our y-axis. So our b is going to be a -4. So now that we know our m and b, all we have to do is plug it in like we did in the last example. So we're going to have y is equal to, and instead of writing m, we're going to write a +4/5. And then we're going to keep our x. And that's going to be plus our -4. Remember that positive and negative? We can just erase that positive, so we just have a -4. Here's an example I want you to complete on your own. So I want you to pause the video, go through, answer it on your own. And once you've completed it, I want you to go ahead and press start, and we will go through it together. Remember, our equation for slope-intercept form is always going to be y is equal to mx plus b. So our first step is to find our m. Our m, as we learned before, is going to be the change in y all over the change in x. So we see that we have to go, if we start our top number, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times down, so that'll be an 8 on top, and since we went downwards, that's going to be a -8. And then we had to go 1, 2, 3, 4 times to the right. And since you went to the right, that will be a positive. Now we know that 8 divided by 4 is just 2, so we can say that is a -2. Now we need to find our b. If you remember, we have to draw a line through our y-axis and find where it crosses at. And we see that it crosses right here, because that's where that dot crosses at and where our line goes through. And so that's going to be 1, 2, 3 times down, so our b is going to be a -3 because we went downwards. So then we're going to have y is equal to, and instead of writing m, we're going to write a -2, and then our x, and that's going to be plus our b, which was a -3. And we're going to erase that plus sign since we have a negative sign right beside it. Now let's talk about finding our equation of the line when we just have 2 points without the graph. We can go ahead and find our slope the same way as we did in the previous chapter. Remember, our equation is always y is equal to mx plus b. So our first step is to find our m as we did in 3.1. So that's going to be the change in y all over the change in x. So we know that our change in y is going to be our second numbers. So we're going to subtract them because it is a change. So we have 7 minus 5. And then our change in x is going to be the x value. So then we have 0 minus 12. And that is going to be equal to 2 over a negative 12, which is the same thing as negative 1/6. So that will be our m, or our slope. Our b is always where we said that the x value is equal to 0. So if here we notice our x value is 0, and when that x value is 0, we see that we have a y value of 7. So our b is going to be 7. So now we're going to write out our equation. We have y is equal to, and instead of m, we're going to write a negative 1/6. And our b is going to be a positive 7. And that will be our final answer. I want you to pause the video and try this example on your own. Once you've completed it, you can go ahead and press start and we will go through it together. Remember that our equation from before was y is equal to mx plus b. Our first step is to find our m, and we know for that we have to subtract our y values, so that would give us a 3 minus 6 all over, and our x values is 0 and 8, so that would be a 0 minus 8. So that would give us negative 3 over a negative 8, which is the same thing as positive 3/8. So m is equal to a positive 3/8 because a negative divided by a negative makes a positive. And our b is going to be when we have x is equal to 0, which we see is here. So when x is 0, we see that y is 3, so that is going to be b is equal to 3. So then now for our equation, we write y is equal to, and instead of m, we're going to write our 3/8. And then we have our x plus, and our b is going to be 3. And that will be your final answer. Go ahead and start on your classic assignment and try to attempt it on your own.